Welcome to Rooted Realities, where honest talk meets soulful insight. This podcast will guide you through life's ups and downs, offering clarity, courage, and a gentle reminder to give yourself grace. I'm your host, Christmas Miller, holistic health practitioner, life coach, and spiritual mentor. With each episode, I'll blend ancient wisdom with modern insight to inspire you to stay accountable and empowered. So if you're ready to grow from the inside out, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Christmas here. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I want to talk about love, but not in the way it's usually discussed. I'm not talking about romance, chemistry, or even about who stayed or who left. This conversation is about what happens when the way we try to love others slowly costs us ourselves. Now, most people don't wake up one day and all of a sudden decide to abandon themselves. That's not what I'm saying, but it does happen quietly and gradually over time. And it also happens more often than you think because of all of the good traits a person has, like being caring, loyal, or understanding. And that's a good thing, having all those positive traits. But over time, if you're not careful, self-abandonment starts to feel normal. So let's talk about what that looks like and why it's so easy to confuse it with love. More importantly, what changes when you do learn how to love in a way that doesn't require you to disappear. So today is all about you. It's not about blame. It's about gaining more clarity on how you show up in your relationships and for yourself. So if you've ever felt tired, resentful, or oddly disconnected while telling yourself you're doing the right thing, this conversation is for you. Now, let's talk about love. Because so many people are looking for love. They want connection. They want to feel chosen, safe, valued, and ain't nothing wrong with none of that. But the truth is, most of us are searching with an internal compass that was never calibrated in a healthy way. We learned what love looks like by watching, by surviving, by adapting. And in most of those lessons, loving yourself was not the priority. Some people realize this quietly in small moments where something just doesn't feel right anymore. Others, they only see it after hitting the same wall again and again, wondering why love keeps hurting, draining, or costing them so much. When you don't know what love actually looks like in real time, it becomes easy to confuse it with things that slowly pull you away from yourself. So why are there so many people searching for love, but ending up confused, drained, or disconnected? I believe it's because most people were never taught how to love in general. Think about it. They never were taught how to love at the base core level, starting with themselves. Instead, what they learned were substitutes. Love got confused with endurance, with loyalty at any cost, with keeping the peace, with being understanding, flexible, or low maintenance, and always being the one to hold the line. And somewhere along the way, self-love became a phrase, not a practice. People say, oh, you have to love yourself. But nobody shows you what that actually looks like in real time. Or how to stay honest with yourself, how to protect your energy, and how to notice when something that looks like love is slowly pulling you away from yourself. So people do what they know. They adapt. They accommodate. They override their instincts and intuition. And they do it because the framework they were given for love never included themselves in the first place. If we knew how to love, it would make it easier to recognize what love isn't. It truly would. So what about that self-abandonment aspect? Is it a learned behavior? I think so, and here's why. Self-abandonment doesn't start as a conscious choice. It develops as a skill, a way of staying connected, a way of keeping things calm, a way of making sure you don't offend anyone. Most people learn it early. You learn when to hold back, when to stay quiet, when to adjust yourself so things don't fall apart. And because it works, at least at first, it doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like maturity. It feels like being responsible. It feels like love. But over time, something shifts. The body learns something very important, not consciously, not in words. It learns your needs can wait, that your discomfort isn't urgent, that staying connected matters more than staying honest. So your body adapts. You tense instead of speaking up. You override signals instead of listening. You keep going even when something in you is pulling back. And eventually, it becomes automatic. That's right, automatic. Your needs don't disappear. They just get deprioritized. In other words, they become optional. And then you start checking in with everyone else before you check in with yourself. You explain away your discomfort. You talk yourself out of what you need or feel, not because you don't know it's there, but because you've learned that keeping connection matters more than keeping yourself intact. And this is why self-abandonment is so easy to confuse with love. It's familiar, it's practiced, and it often gets rewarded. Until one day you realize the cost isn't situational anymore. It's internal. Oh yes, there is a cost of not knowing how to love. When you don't actually know how to love in a grounded way, the damage doesn't always show up as one big moment. It shows up internally first. You stop trusting yourself. You're tired all the time, but you can't quite explain why. So resentment starts to creep in, not loud at first, but it just sits there underneath the surface. Boundaries get blurry, and then they totally get walked over. And you start second-guessing what's okay and what's not. And many of us miss this part because the harm doesn't always feel dramatic. No, it feels familiar. Being overlooked, being lied to, being taken for granted, being unappreciated, even being mistreated in ways you've learned to explain away. And because it's familiar, it doesn't always register as a problem right away. Sometimes that internal pressure flips the other direction. Like that moment when you finally snap, when you're cussing somebody out, talking sideways, saying things you wouldn't want anyone else to hear. That's not you being real. That's not passion. That's information. It's a sign something important has already broken down. Because love, it cannot function without respect, period. And when respect is gone, what's left isn't honesty or chemistry, no matter how much the world tries to normalize it or even try to romanticize it. What's left is built up frustration, resentment, and all the things you didn't even know how to say leaking out sideways. Now, here's the part many of us don't like to look at. The responsibility for how we treat other people still belongs to the person performing the behavior. That means if I'm the one doing the behavior, I'm responsible for what I do. If you're the one doing the behavior, you're responsible for what you do. It doesn't matter whether someone explodes or shuts down, whether they learned it through fear, survival, or pain. Trauma explains patterns, but it doesn't excuse the harm. And we all need to stop and get honest with ourselves about our behavior. Because if you do look at yourself from outside doing all of that, it won't look pretty. It should be enough to self-correct the behavior. I know how powerful that is, stepping outside of yourself and watching the behavior, especially when it's ugly. I've had to do it for myself. But what about those long relationships that last for decades? What about those? Well, long and healthy relationships are definitely something to aspire to, especially when they're built on mutual respect, honesty, genuine love, and care. Actually, many of them are very good benchmarks. They truly are. But length alone isn't proof of health. A lot of people stay together for decades. Some call it love, but for others, what they're really practicing is endurance. Some stay because leaving feels too costly, literally and figuratively, or starting over feels terrifying, or because aging alone feels worse than staying disconnected. And for some, they've invested so much that walking away feels like failure. For others, sometimes, maintaining the appearance of a relationship feels safer than facing what's actually missing. So they tolerate, they minimize, they make deals with themselves, and little by little, they lose their voice, their self-worth, their sense of who they are. That kind of self-abandonment doesn't always explode. Sometimes it just quietly erodes a person from the inside out. And when we celebrate longevity without ever talking about the cost, we normalize relationships that look solid on the outside while breaking people behind the scenes. Now, if any of this stirred something in you, pause for a moment, not to judge yourself, but to be honest about where you are right now. This isn't about judgment, especially from me. There isn't a single person walking this planet who has the right to judge anyone else, myself included. We're all here to learn, to grow, and to expand from our experiences. And I've walked many of these roads myself, and I've had experiences that most will find utterly difficult to deal with or manage. So there is no judgment from me. That's called being human. What matters here is clarity. A lot of what we think love looks like didn't come from out of nowhere. It came from what we watched, learned, and absorbed. It came from what culture keeps modeling as normal. So, what changes when you learn how to love? For one, you begin to understand that caring for yourself has to come first. Not because you matter more than anyone else, but because it's what allows you to show up in healthy ways and to recognize when something is crossing into unhealthy territory. But this doesn't mean you suddenly get it right all the time. It simply means it starts with you. You begin to check in with yourself before you override what you feel. You notice when something doesn't sit right easily instead of pushing through it. You stop explaining away moments that quietly cost you your peace. And this doesn't mean becoming selfish, guarded, or cold. It means offering yourself the same care you naturally give to someone you truly love. The honesty, the patience, the protection. When that changes, your compass changes, and so does any unhealthy pattern they begin to dismantle. You recognize sooner when something is off. You speak up earlier without needing to explode or shut down. You don't need a breaking point to tell you a line has been crossed. And slowly, love stops feeling like something you have to earn or survive. It starts to feel steady, clear, mutual. Not perfect, but real. And from that place, it becomes much easier to choose differently. And I'm going to tell you, you won't do it out of fear or anger either. You'll do it out of respect for yourself and the type of life you're building. So here's what I want to leave with you. It's never too late to check in with yourself, ever. And it's never too late to change course. So maybe the more honest question to ask yourself first is this: what does a healthy relationship with myself actually look like? Think about that, because how you relate to yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. It will be your mirror. And that means getting real and honest about what you need, not what you've learned to tolerate, what's actually required for you to feel grounded, respected, and whole. And here's something I know for sure. I've seen this not only in my own walk, but with lots of people for 25 years. When a person's needs aren't being met, problems show up internally and externally. And your needs are like water, oxygen, and food, whatever they are. And eventually, if you're in a relationship of any kind, they will show up there too. Clarity doesn't guarantee easy choices, but it does stop the cycle of repeating things that quietly hurts. And that, my friends, is where change actually begins. Thank you for listening to Rooted Realities. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It really helps others find the show. Your support is greatly appreciated. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook for more updates and new content. Until next time, stay rooted and keep growing.